This is episode 27, a solo Q&A episode around fat loss phases, maintenance phases, and how to get more protein into your diet. Welcome to the Doc Fitness Podcast, where it's all about developing your mindset, training, and nutritional knowledge so you can lose body fat and build muscle effectively while still living a real life. I am your host, David O'Connor. Now let's get into the show. How are we keeping, guys? And a big welcome back to the Doc Fitness Podcast. Now today's episode is another Q&A style episode where it's mainly around kind of like fat loss phases and what are maintenance style phases, okay? So this is all about like losing fat for the long term, keeping it off, and knowing how to do that effectively as well. I did go through this in a more deeper concept with Steve All, I think on 2 other episodes where we went through like phasing for fat loss phases and phases for muscle gain, that kind of stuff. So I will link those episodes up in the show notes as well if you haven't seen those and want to dive a bit further into this. But today's 3 main questions I took for this podcast flow nicely into one another. And to kick things off, the first one comes from a lady around: Dave, can I make progress at maintenance? Now, I can interpret this kind of in a few different directions. But the first thing we need to do with this question is we need to kind of establish the context behind it all. When you say progress, what do you actually mean? So like, I know that this lady has kind of gone through a big kind of fat loss journey to date. She was actually with us with Doc Fitness here in Galway for a while, and with work she had to leave us, unfortunately. But I know that she's gone through a big fat loss phase, and I know that she's probably going through a maintenance phase now with her other coach, wherever she may be. So from here, in terms of progress, I think she's probably asking from a fat loss context. Can I still lose fat while at maintenance? And when you look at kind of like fat loss phases and kind of maintenance phases and kind of like quote unquote gaining phases, if you like, these people classify this as cutting and bulking. If you're in a fat loss phase, you're putting yourself in an ideal opportunity to drop body fat, right? Obviously, if you're resistance training and if you're eating enough protein across the day, you're going to make sure that the majority of the weight that you lose does come from body fat and not lean muscle tissue, all right? When you're in a maintenance phase, you still have the potential to make a small little progress in terms of gaining muscle tissue and slowly gaining or losing body fat over time. This is kind of what people classify as body recomposition. Now, it's such a kind of slow process, you might not notice anything, but even to know that is kind of happening at a fundamental level ever so slowly, people kind of give maintenance phases more credit than they deserve. Because it's not just about the fat loss as well, because if somebody, and this flows into my next question as well, like, but if somebody is in a long-term fat loss phase, you can't just expect to lose fat every single week and not hit a wall. Like, this has happened with one of our ladies recently as well. She came from Slimming World. She's made an incredible amount of progress. I think she's lost over 3 stone with Slimming World, but for the last, I think it was 3 to 6 months, she's literally been hovering at the same 1 to 2 kilo weight up and down each week, thinking that she was gaining each week and losing each week when it's not the case. But she was basically maintaining her weight for the last 3 to 6 months, even though she was still following the plan, doing everything she thought she was doing right. But the fact of the matter was, she was more so eating at a maintenance level phase. Now the thing about that is that when she came to me, for example, it was okay for her to dive back straight into a fat loss phase. I gave her a little bit of education by why she wasn't losing weight and kind of what the way Slimming World works. And now slowly but surely we've been dropping, I think it was half a kilo each week, and where she's aiming for a wedding in a 1.5 years time. So it's a perfectly sustainable rate for her. But it was okay for her to jump straight back into a fat loss phase because she wasn't actually losing weight for the last 3 or so months. Whereas if you were somebody that's consistently losing weight each week, losing body fat, we'll say in this case, you can't expect to keep that going. You're going to hit a wall. Things are going to down-regulate. You're going to get more hungry. You're going to get tired. You're going to get kind of fed up and pissed off of it all. And this is where people kind of throw in the towel. Like, everyone's so focused on fat loss, they never actually look at, right, what actually happens when I do lose a stone? What happens when I do lose those 5 pounds? Like, where do I go from there? And this is kind of what we teach people for the long term. We're not just teaching people how to get in a calorie deficit to drop body fat. That's easy to do technically, but how do we sustain and maintain people's weights without going off the deep end again and without kind of going back to old habits as such? And this is kind of what we talk about a lot with building habits and stuff over time. So the answer to the question, can I progress? In a maintenance phase, of course you can. And that's kind of why I went through that little segment there, is because it's not just about losing fat. You need to give yourself a psychological break. And now I'm after realizing as well, I'm kind of crossing over to question 2, but I get to that in a minute. You'll understand why. But on the other side of that, once you're in a maintenance phase, your calories are up, right? So basically a maintenance phase is eating at a level where you don't gain or lose any weight. Your weight kind of hovers around the same each week, right? When you're doing that, you have more energy available that you can kind of put into your workouts. Provided you're resistance training properly. This is another massive factor, like, because I talk about training here in this podcast. If somebody's in the gym and they're on cardio bikes and doing like a body pump style class, I wouldn't classify that as resistance training. I would just classify that as kind of like burning calories, glorified exercise. By resistance training, I mean you're properly, progressively overloading each week. You're getting stronger. You're actually building muscle tissue, and you can see long-term gain from your training. Now, it's not to say that doing a body pump class or a spin class is bad. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying what I classify as resistance training as, okay? So you're going to have more energy that you can put into your workout, so it's going to help you with getting fitter, it's going to help you with getting stronger, it's going to help you with progressing more in the gym. So when you do go back into a fat loss phase, you have this kind of like more, we'll call it updated strength levels, maybe slightly more muscle tissue, which is all going to help you down the line. And the other side of it then as well is that you'll be actually motivated more so to go back into a fat loss phase because your body has kind of had the time to recover. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So of course you can make progress at maintenance level. People are just so focused on fat loss, they don't even know what maintenance is, or how do you do maintenance? Where the hell do I start with that? All those kind of questions come into play. But obviously if you have a proper coach, hopefully they're doing this with you properly. It's something that I'm actually going through, I think, with 3 of my online clients now at the moment as well. And to be honest, like I've one of my ladies online, I've had to convince her maybe 2 or 3 weeks down a row that where she is right now with stressors of just general life and college work and everything else going on, maintenance phase right now suits her, because if she tries to drop body fat right now, she's just going to add another stress that she doesn't fucking need, and she's going to hit a wall again, so it's so much more, guys, than just losing fat. This is not like, health is so much more than how you fucking look in the mirror. You can't ignore the psychological aspect of things, your training aspect of things. If you want to enjoy training in the gym as well, and if you're constantly in, let's say, an energy deficit, you're constantly trying to drop body fat, you're never going to have that true potential energy that you could have if you have more calories topped up, which is basically energy at the end of the day. So don't forget that, like. And this is why I keep saying this is kind of transitioning to question 2, because question 2 was more so a chat I was having with one of my one-to-one clients here in Galway, and the fact that he has been more or less trying to lose fat now for the last year, right? He's only back with me 6 months, but he's been trying to lose fat for the last year, and he did make great progress. But because he was well over 6 months in a fat loss phase, like over 24 weeks in a fat loss phase, once he came to me, he started to kind of hit a wall. Now the thing was, he didn't realize that, and I was trying to kind of educate him on the fact that, look, we need to take a break with your nutritional side of things. So he was constantly trying to put himself in a big calorie deficit each week, and then if a stressful day came at work, or if the weekend came where he was kind of bringing the kids out for kind of activities and stuff, loads of food was coming in, and he was undoing kind of the progress that he had made during the week. So he was kind of more or less eating at a very, very small calorie deficit at the end of the week. So he's losing a tiny bit of fat, but he wasn't seeing much progress overall, right? Now, the kind of question I got from him was like, Dave, why can't I just stay going? Why can't I go for losing the fat each week for a year? Now, obviously that's never going to happen, because you're going to have holidays in there, you're going to have Christmas time, you're going to have family events, this, that, and the other. You're never going to be consistently dropping fat every week. But like something that we do here with our clients is we'd rarely recommend a client to go over 12 weeks consistently in a fat loss phase. Now, when I say consistent, I mean that client has dropped body fat, hit their targets every single week for the 12 weeks. There's no point saying that they have done a 12-week fat loss phase, but 4 of those weeks they were not in a deficit. They've ate more that week, so the calories are up, so they actually didn't lose fat for 4 weeks out of the 12. And that's not at all. That's not really a consistent fat loss phase. Consistent 12 weeks, we don't really go more than that. And the reason being is that things start to down-regulate the more you diet over time. Because think about it, you're giving your body less energy than it wants and that it kind of needs, right? You're in an energy deficit, so you can burn off the unwanted body fat. People classify this term as kind of metabolic damage. I'm sure you might have heard it thrown around there before, but like, What they're really classifying, or what they're really talking about, is metabolic adaptation. Your body will adapt over time the longer you're in a calorie deficit. So let's just pretend that I'm 200 pounds, right? And I start dropping body fat at week 1. Now I'm at week 12 and I'm 180 pounds. I've 20 pounds lost in 12 weeks. Or even if it's 190, or let's just make it easy, I've 12 pounds lost. So I'm 188 pounds, right, at the end of the 12 weeks. Now, when I was at 200 pounds, I would have been automatically burning more energy compared to when I'm 188 pounds. I've less body mass to move around. I'm going to expand less energy overall. So the deficit required to help me lose a pound a week at the start I'm saying might here because everyone's different, that might have needed to get bigger over the 12 weeks in order to see that same pound in the scales each week. So hopefully that makes sense, because my body mass has now come down. I'm now burning less energy than I was at 200 pounds. And because I've less body fat over time, I may not see as big a loss in the scales each week as well, because this is when people start out with us as well. Like, they might see 3 pounds a week for the first 3 weeks, and then it goes down to a pound. But the 3 pounds a week is class, so they want to keep the 3 pounds a week going, but it's highly unrealistic and unsustainable to do that. Of course we could do that, but you're going to be literally eating fucking lettuce and chicken for breakfast, lunch and dinner to keep the calories so low. But again, it's because your body mass has come down. You've less body fat now overall, so you have to kind of take those points into consideration, right? Other things happening at a physiological level that you actually don't see, right? And these are things like your hunger and kind of cravings start to go up slightly over time the more you deficit over time as well, because these systems are up-regulated, right? And this is what I mean by the term metabolic adaptation. You're burning less energy overall. The hunger and kind of craving signals and that kind of stuff, satiety stuff, they're up-regulated ever so slightly. So now all of a sudden you're hungry, or eating the same calories you would have been eating on week 1, for example. You're feeling more irritable. You don't have as much energy. You don't feel as energetic in your workouts, right? So that's why, going back to question 1, maintenance phases are so fucking important, or kind of quote-unquote diet breaks as well. Basically a period where we bring calories up to a level where you don't really gain or lose much weight or any weight. Yes, you might come up with weight a pound or 2 in the scales, but that's not fat. That is just a fact that because you're putting more energy back into your diet, you're putting more calories back into your diet, your body weight is going to fluctuate up ever so slightly, because I'm getting off track a little bit here, but for every gram of carbohydrate you eat, you store 3 to 4 grams of water. So if I automatically eat more calories, which is usually going to be a bump up in carbohydrates and fats, you're automatically going to store a little bit more water. And that then will result on anywhere from half pound to 2 pounds on the scales, depending on the person. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, guys. It's just kind of, it's showing you that we prefer to phase out our clients' fat loss phases. If we have clients here in Doc Fitness for 5 years, it does not mean that they're dropping body fat for 5 years. Not at all. And it's not all about fat loss at the end of the day either. We have clients now that haven't dropped a pound in the last year. They haven't gained a pound in the last year, but they've got considerably stronger. They've been super busy with their lives. Getting here 3 times a week was just a struggle for them, but they got that. Their mindset is so much better. And as well, they're considerably leaner, out of more muscle mass, putting their frame now in over that year period at maintenance as well. Slight gains, but again, ones that you can fucking notice. Once they want to kind of go back into a fat loss phase, then again, we can work out, right, what's the most suitable fat loss phase for you? Is it going to be an 8 to 12 week thing where we kind of do it nice, slow and steady and consistently drop that's kind of suitable for your lifestyle each week? Or do you want to do something that's fast, quick and hard, maybe coming up to a holiday? And again, we lay down those expectations up front. Here, look at what's achievable in 6 weeks. Look at what's achievable in 8 to 12 weeks compared to kind of where you're at now, where you want to go, and then what's after that as well. Obviously, once the holiday comes and the holiday after that, what happens during those time frames as well. And you're just at a much better position to kind of attack those phases once you know how to do it right and you're doing things sustainably over time. So maintenance phases are fucking important for giving you more energy and more recovery overall, because when you go into a maintenance phase, those signals, like your hunger signals, your cravings, kind of tiredness, fatigue, all that kind of stuff, it's like you're kind of recuperating all that, right? And you're kind of getting your body back to normal, if you like. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong. It's just that's just the normal way things down-regulate over time. You're kind of up-regulating it again as such. It's kind of like a deload week in training, or a week where you do a lighter week of training. Because if you're training consistently each week, and if you're training right, like you're progressively overloading each week, you're trying to get stronger, Maybe you're doing more sets and reps in the gym. You're building volume over the course of like a 4 to 6 week block. The more advanced you get over time, like if you have like 6 months to a year of consistent training under your belt, you have to start incorporating proper planned weeks where you take a big reduction in load, you take a deload week, and all that deload week is like, it's like basically half of the volume you were doing the previous weeks. So it gives your body a chance to actually go away, to recover, and to kind of like tap up your energy levels again, so you can attack your next 4 to 6 week block of training properly, and you can progress onwards then from there. So again, you can see why these things are so important, and it's not all just about fucking, oh, lose body fat, lose body fat, lose body fat. Hopefully that makes sense. So that was question 1, can you make progress at maintenance levels? And number 2 then was kind of like the question on why can't I just lose fat straight year round for year round? Now again guys, this is all person dependent. Somebody who's severely overweight could get away with a much longer term phase than 12 weeks. But I'm talking about someone here that maybe wants to lose between 1 to 3 stone and still live a real life amongst it all. And by real life I mean they want to incorporate their wine throughout the week. They want to incorporate the drinks with their friends. They want to incorporate maybe some ice cream, chocolate every day if they want. They want to know how to do that but consistently drop body fat each week. They want to know how to do all this and accept that every week is not going to be perfect. They want to know all this, have a holiday in the middle of it and not feel guilty after the holiday and just get straight back into their plan. You know, this is kind of what we're after for people over time. And maintenance phases have physical, psychological and just massive benefits overall that people are not even aware of, or they don't give them enough credit for. And again, you're not really meant to know this stuff, but this is what us coaches do day in, day out, and we work one-on-one with our clients on this. The last question then, and the final question for this episode is, how do I get in more protein? So, just if you're a new listener, guys, if you're a listener that is just still unsure around protein, because some people, they realize, yeah, protein's important, but what the hell is protein for? Think of it as for recovery and for growing your muscle tissue, right? Now, ladies, listen to this. Don't freak out when I say that. I don't mean you have to grow slabs of muscle tissue. I just mean that you're going to look in the body shape that you want when you drop body fat. If you're not getting in enough protein, and I'm not going to get deep into this now because I have articles written on this as well. I can link up my protein article to this to talk about how much I'm actually talking about. But if you're not getting in quote unquote enough, right, you risk losing total body weight. So by total body weight, I mean you risk losing fat mass, which is what you want, and muscle mass when you're losing weight. So when I say weight loss, when I say fat loss, I really mean fat loss overall. A fat loss phase means you're trying to drop body fat while maintaining the muscle tissue you have, right? And protein, ensuring you're getting enough protein is going to make sure that you're recovering properly from your workouts and that you're holding onto the muscle tissue you have. And if you're a rank beginner, you have actually the potential to build a little bit of muscle tissue whilst dropping body fat as well, which is kind of like the holy grail of this stuff too. So, how do you get in more protein? So the first step that we do, or I often do with clients, is take a look at your overall day. Like, when do you have breakfast? Where do you have breakfast? Is it at home? Is it at work? Is it in the car rushing? Does breakfast even suit you to have it? Or is it always rushing? It's just like a shitty bowl of cornflakes and you're out the gap. Or do you really enjoy breakfast? Do you feel like you function well on breakfast? Like, where is that first? Second question then, where is lunch? And what happens after lunch? Usually I find that people have an okay routine around breakfast and lunch. But after lunch comes in, they either have a dinner super early, so they might have dinner like between 4 to 6, but yet they're not going to bed till fucking 10 or 12 at night. So what happens during that absolutely massive gap during the day? Because usually what happens with people is they have breakfast, lunch and dinner because they were brought up in that's the way they think they need to eat. But what you might be more suited to is spacing them out a little bit longer. So you're having breakfast, lunch, you're having dinner like later on the day, so like between 7 to 9 we'll call it. And maybe you have like a high protein snack between lunch and dinner, which is more or less nearly a meal in itself. And that's where this question you're going to get the most value from. It's kind of getting in, making sure, number one, you have protein on each main meal of the day. That's why I mentioned breakfast, lunch and dinner there. Do you have a protein source in that meal? And by protein source, I mean, do you have like do you have like a palm size of protein at least? Which could be like 100 gram, 120 gram chicken breast. Lads, we usually kind of double that, so you're talking like 150 plus 200 gram chicken breast there, right, in a meal. I'm just using chicken breast because it's an easy example. Like obviously you have eggs, you have turkey, you have fucking low fat cheese, there's obviously vegan sources you can get, there's beans, you have red meat versions, you have fish. This is what I mean by protein sources across the day. Do you have like a full protein source in each main meal of the day? If you don't, that is the first step you can do. Get in a palm-sized serving each meal across the day. The second, that's for ladies. For men, we usually kind of aim for double that, right? The second kind of tip then when it comes to getting in more protein is that kind of snack I talked about there, like kind of between lunch and dinner, or like quote unquote like a small meal in some cases. For men, we usually turn that into a big meal. Ladies, we might turn it into like a high protein snack. But what do you normally have there? Is it like a coffee and a few biscuits at work, or it's just cake going? Is this like a high protein yogurt with a bit of fruit, which is just a perfect option? It's so easy to do because there's so many high protein yogurts out these days. And if you haven't seen our yogurt series actually as well on Instagram, I'll link those up in the show notes. We have, I think, 3 to 4 different posts now at this stage on different high protein yogurts you can get in Tesco, Aldi, Lidl, those kind of places. You can have that with a serving of fruit that you like, and you can mix up flavors of that. What else can you go for? Like I've seen people recommend like, hard boiled eggs as snacks, but to me that's boring as fuck. Who wants to be munching on a hard boiled egg when you can have a tasty protein yogurt? Some of them are even come with like kind of crunchy kind of toppings on that you can pop into them as well. So they're just really fucking tasty. You're getting 20 grams of protein in for a serving of that, and they're low calorie-ish, and then you're going to have a nice serving of fruit that you want there. And you could rotate that fruit every second and third week if you want as well, to keep some variety in there. Like that's just a super easy example, but like they're like a protein bar is another simple example if you're stuck for protein kind of sources across the day. But again, I understand they can get expensive and whatnot. You could make you could take your whatever you have for breakfast and make a smaller snack version of that. There's so many easy ways to do it. You could have your lunch and just have a smaller snack version of your lunch. Again, the world really is your oyster with that. A snack doesn't have to be something drastically different from your lunch, breakfast, or dinner. Like it's the way we've kind of been brought up to classify that. What's to say you can't have your lunch again for your second meal that day, but just have a smaller version of it? Like, let's just pretend it was fucking a little bit of rice, a little bit of chicken, a little bit of salad for lunch you had, but then you had another smaller version that you just made extra of the night before, and you had that as a snack as well. Again, you need to find what you like that you can manage around kind of life as well as such. And if you're somebody that likes kind of fucking chocolate and you love having chocolate during the day, you can just as easily incorporate a little chocolate bar into that too. Like I wouldn't go around saying go getting a full Mars bar or a Golden Crisp or something and having it every lunch. It depends on the person, because if you're a small lady and you're eating a 250 calorie bar at lunch every day, it could just start to add up the calories across the day to make life a little bit harder for you, versus having a 200-pound man can probably easily fit that into his day. But again, we prefer to kind of push kind of snack things to after dinner time when you're winding down for the evening, and you can enjoy a little bit of chocolate, maybe a biscuit or two with a cuppa, and not unrail your fat loss kind of progress. Alright, but so bulking up your main meals is number one. And even if you do have a protein source in your main meals, it's just a matter of increasing that ever so slightly. Number two is looking at your snacks across the day. Are they kind of more protein focused? They don't all have to be like, but if you're having 3 main meals a day, you'd want to be getting, like, usually, it depends on the person of course, but like a little high protein snack there works really, really well. If you're a male, and especially if you're over 200-pound male, you could be looking at essentially another meal there, really, like, or just like a double size snack compared to what a lady might eat, The third one then for the more protein is getting a whey protein source. Now, if you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, you can get vegan sources of these. But whey protein, all it is a convenient way to get in more protein into your day. It's not something that's going to fucking make you massive. It's not bad for you. It's made as a byproduct actually of cheese manufacture back in the day. Like years ago, they didn't even realise that they used to be throwing away this kind of byproduct, this whey protein. They used to be throwing away this whey as a byproduct of cheese manufacture until they realised that it was an incredibly powerful protein source, and then started selling it, and now it's a multi-million-dollar industry. But whey protein, you can put these into yogurts to bulk up the protein source of the yogurts. You can put these into porridges. You can even mix them with feckin' eggs. You can drink them with slight bit of like skimmed or low fat milk to make them kind of more milkshake if you like, or else you can just have them with water after a workout. Again, it doesn't really matter when you have them during the day. It's more so to help with your overall protein targets across the day. So if you're somebody who severely lacks in protein, or you get feck all in a breakfast, if you're having 1 to 2 eggs at breakfast, that's not enough protein. Like, usually it's not. Sorry, now I say that loud because if usually what we find when people have 1 to 2 eggs a day in breakfast, or if they're having just porridge, we'll say with a bit of fruit, they're getting such little protein in there, they usually rarely make up for that in their other meals of the day. Unless they're having like 60 grams of protein at lunch, which is the equivalent to like 3 small chicken breasts, and then like 60 grams again at dinner, which is like another 3 chicken breasts, or like 2 feckin' steaks. Do you know what I mean? So when you put it into perspective like that, you realise, okay, whey protein is actually effective. You can add it to porridge in the morning, you could add it to yogurt, you could add it to porridge in the evening. I'm not saying you only have to have porridge in the morning. And even personally, I don't even like drinking whey protein on its own, and I only use it if I need to use it if I don't get in enough through food. So like usually if I'm having whey protein, I might have it 3 to 4 times a week, but I mix it in with my porridge to bulk up the protein source of that meal. So hopefully that makes sense. Usually you only need a basic whey protein. You don't need to be going for fancy ones. Like usually we find vanilla works. Vanilla just works. No matter what brand it is, it mixes really, really well with porridge. It mixes so easily in drinks, that kind of stuff as well if you want it, and it mixes really well with yogurts. Like you can experiment and go for strawberry and these different chocolate ones, but like usually we found over time that they're just not as nice as vanilla ones. But again, it depends on the brand, it depends on the texture of the powder and that kind of stuff. But again, third little tip for getting in more protein across your day will be looking at buying a whey protein supplement. So guys, there was a lot of information there thrown across that I mentioned in reference to podcasts and articles, that kind of stuff. I'm going to link up, I think I've one, I'm just checking my notebook here, I've the podcast with Steve Hall I mentioned for kind of like the fat loss phases. I have the protein article if you want to geek out more on like how much protein you need to get in across the day. I have the yogurts from Instagram. There's going to be over 5 or 6 links in the show notes page if you want to head over to that on docfitnessonline/episode 27. And you'll always find every link for everything under every show notes page. Anyway, if you ever wanted to browse back through all episodes, don't forget that all the information is always on the website, and I always put a lot of detail into those episodes on the website as well, just if you're listening to this like on a podcast app or similar. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. The next time you're going to hear from me, I have a good friend, Jason from Monroe Fitness, coming on the show. And we've decided that we're going to dive deep into popular diets that we've worked with a lot of clients on. So if you know anybody that's currently doing Slimming World or has done Slimming World, even if you've done Slimming World in the past, this goes for ladies and men, because I think as well, the more men that are aware, you might be able to better educate your partner around things or direct them to like more of a sustainable resource when it comes to losing weight. But like Weight Watchers, Slimming World kind of episode, we're going to basically dive into it. It's not going to be an opinion based episode where we're just giving our own opinions. Of course we're going to give our insights and stuff, but those insights are going to be based on facts, client experience, and kind of the current evidence that's out there as well. So stay tuned for that one in the next 1 to 2 weeks time, if I manage to get it edited before in time for my wedding, which is in less than 2 weeks as well. But guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any questions for future episodes, remember that every now and then I pop out a question on Instagram stories and I ask you if you have any questions relating to training, nutrition, or mindset stuff, and I basically take the top 3 that come in from that, or / kind of like the first come first served basis if I haven't covered them before on the episode. So thank you for tuning in, have a great week, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye bye.